Matt, you wanna? Volume's off.
Matt, you're muted.
Not on mute, but we can't hear him.
You're still on mute, Matt.
It's not on mute, but the mic's. Okay.
Fred, can you hear us? Voice. Can you talk for us, please? You're muted, Fred.
Yeah, I hear you. Everything's
Okay,
good.
great. Thank you.
I hear you, everybody also.
Thank you.
I did that from last meeting too. I was trying to create a stereo effect. You probably have to drop off and log in.
is appeal 21 actually, we have a bunch of continuances. So let's take care of those first. So appeal 21-19141 has requested a continuance.
Yeah, Matt, I got an email today from Ed Murphy, the applicant's attorney, requesting a continuance until August 2nd to afford the applicant some time to, hopefully resolve some of the issues with the township and, there should be a revised application or revised plans submitted in the near future, and that will afford time for that to be reviewed before they present it in a month and a half or so.
Okay. Does anybody on the board have any questions? Okay. Jim, is there an opening on that day in August?
Yes, there is.
Does somebody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to continue appeal 21-1941 to August 2nd.
Any second? All right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
All right, the second one is appeal 22-1957. That's Selco Partnerships, DBA Verizon Wireless. That one, the attorney has requested kind of an open-ended, indefinite continuance, has waived all the provisions of the MPC, and I think there's some FCC codes that are relevant as well, waived those. Again, to work with the township, see if they can come up with a solution that works. And by having the open-ended one, it gives them enough time to do it. And then once they would want to have the hearing, they would give 45 days notice. If there needs to be any re-advertising, they've agreed to pay for the re-advertisement.
Any questions from the board?
No.
Somebody want to make a motion? All right, can the chairman make a motion? Adam?
Sure. I mean, you do have a
Okay.
motion on the floor.
Right. I'll make a motion to continue 22-1957 as requested. For a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Next on the agenda is appeal 22-1960, Jessica and Lucas Rams. Adam, do you want to do your thing?
Yeah, I can mark the exhibits. We have a few.
Yep.
And I'm going to use council's numbers just to make it a little bit easier. So we have A1 as site plans. I think those show the elevation. A2, also site plans that show, I think, existing versus proposed. A3 is the house plans that show the garage and first floor. A4, the house plans that show the second floor and the roof. A5, the front facade of the house. A6, the rear of the house. A7, the application. A8, the site plans that were submitted. A9 is the reasons for the request of relief. That's dated 3/10 from Council Alex Schneider. A10 is the 6/21/22 letter outlining the relief. And A11 is the wetland study summary, which is dated January 26th of this year from Penn's Trail Environmental. B1 is proof of publication, B2 proof of posting, and B3 is the notice to the neighbors.
Great, thank you. Sure, go ahead.
Tell us what you'd like to do.
Great. All right. We have before you here today an application for property at 879 Sandy Run Road, parcel number 200250002. Owners of the property are Lucas and Jessica Rams. The property is currently zoned R2, medium density residential zone. It consists of approximately 17,800 square feet. Applicant's proposing to construct a single-family detached dwelling that would conform to the nature and character of the surrounding single detached dwellings, and it would not be detrimental to the public welfare. I'm going to have the applicant as a witness, I'm going to have the engineer as a witness, and our architect as a witness. Okay? All right. Lucas, you have the microphone on? Can I share a screen here for the PowerPoint or the okay. Right. Lucas, can you state your name for the record?
My name is Lucas Rams.
And you're the owner of the property?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Approximately when did you purchase the property?
My wife and I purchased the property in March of 2021.
Okay. When you initially purchased it, was your intention to build on it?
Yes.
Okay. And what were you planning on building on it?
A single family dwelling
For yourself?
for ourselves, yes.
Okay.
A little closer.
Okay. And you're aware that there's a creek behind your property and a floodplain on your property?
Yes, we were aware of that.
Okay. Are you familiar with some of the surrounding properties?
Yes.
Looking at the map that's in front of you there, is that a proper depiction of the former improved dwelling that was on the property and the outline of the property as it sits in that area?
Yes, as I've seen on the website maps and the satellite pictures.
Okay. Looking at that map again, there's if you're looking away from your property onto Sandy Run Road, there's a property to the right. Is that where that improved dwelling sits on there? Does that seem like it's an accurate depiction of how that property actually sits?
Yes.
Okay. And does that home seem like it sits very close to the front yard?
Yes, it looks like it's pretty much right up to the road.
Okay. Okay. Are you aware of any reason why building this home on this property would be detrimental to the surrounding area?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Did there come a time when you engaged the services of a wetland scientist?
Yes. Beginning of this year, end of last year.
Is this an accurate depiction of the summary of findings from that wetland study?
Yes, it is.
Okay. What was the reason why you engaged this scientist for a study?
We wanted to make sure we didn't have any wetlands on our property.
Okay. Was it pursuant to a letter from RVE engineers?
Yes, that was one of the comments.
Okay. So you did provide a copy. So you did get the survey done, the report done. And what was the conclusion of the report?
The report found that there was no wetlands on the property.
I'm just going to draw the attention. I don't know if you can see my arrow here. Right. Are you aware of any additional reports from any other wetland scientists?
No, I'm not.
Are you aware of the variances that we're here to request?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I'm going to list them for you. Tell me if you verify that they're true and correct to the best of your knowledge. So we're looking at Township Zoning Ordinance 200-22. We're looking for a front yard of 20.13 feet where 30 feet is required.
Correct?
Rear yard 34.43 feet where 45 feet is required.
Correct?
Okay. We're looking for relief from Ordinance 200-51.B1, permit a 77.1% disturbance within a floodplain.
Correct?
200-51.B4C2, lowercase b, to permit a 66.1% disturbance within the 100-foot watercourse buffer.
Correct?
Ordinance 200-51.B6, lowercase b, permit 61.1% disturbance of woodlands where 25% is allowed.
Correct?
And then finally, ordinance 200-61.C, permit setbacks on resource protected lands to measure from lot lines where the setbacks would otherwise be measured from the limit of the resource protected lands.
That's correct.
Okay, great. Right. And if you recall, we originally had a hearing that was supposed to be scheduled for early May in front of the zoning hearing board. And we continued it so that we can go discuss with the township some of their concerns. Is that right?
That's right.
Was there a meeting that occurred?
Yes, there was shortly after.
Okay. And we're here today subsequent to that meeting. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Very good. Okay. That's all I have for Lucas. Do you guys want to save all questions for the end? For all the, all right.
I do have a clarification,
Sure.
Mr. Schneider, because when we had our meeting, there were 3 other variances that were discussed, 2 of which you addressed with the wetland study. Are you still looking for variance for the disturbance of type 2 steep slopes under 51B5A?
To 25% range.
We do need one?
15 to 25%. That's the range you're talking about.
Type 2, right? Yes. We're still looking for those as well.
So that means there's now a total of 7 variances being sought.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
I don't,
Well, the 7th was the wetlands one, right?
Yes, the one with no, you got front yard, rear yard,
Right.
disturbance of floodplain,
Right. Watercourse.
watercourse disturbance, woodlands disturbance, and then the setbacks measured from lot lines rather than resource protected lands.
Oh, right. 7. Yes, you're right. Yes. Thank you.
You're going to have a disturbance of the type 2 steep slope.
Right. Yep.
I presume your engineer will then clarify.
Yes.
Yeah.
Go through it. Yep.
I don't believe that was advertised, that last one on steep slopes.
Actually, the steep slopes is not applicable. Our ordinance has an exception for smaller areas of steep slopes. Your disturbance falls below that threshold. Therefore, no variance was required for the steep slopes.
That's why I
Because
wasn't
the
sure.
area is too small to be considered for that.
So we're all good.
Great. Thanks, Jim. Anything else, Barbara?
Nope, that's it.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thanks. Lucas, again. All right. Just get sworn in first.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to have the engineer testify here today to current site conditions, current natural resources on the property, impact of the township ordinances as they apply to those natural resources, the area available to build a single-family home in the lot, and what's left on the lot to build upon if the relief isn't granted here today. Ms. Byrne, can you please state your name for the record, the company you work for, business address and occupation?
It's Lawrence Byrne, B-Y-R-N-E, licensed professional civil engineer in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and I have an office in Warminster.
Can you just give some, I know you've been admitted in Lower Makefield as an expert previously, but just give some general experience do you have?
I've graduated from Penn State and have about 35 years of experience as a civil engineer doing subdivisions.
Do you have any questions for Ms. Byrne?
No opposition to him being offered as
All right. So we'll accept you as a,
What was
to
that?
ask you to speak into the microphone a little bit more.
I had no opposition to Mr. Burns being accepted by the board as a professional civil engineer for this matter.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thanks. Okay, Mr. Byrne, are you familiar with the subject property that we're here to discuss today?
Yes,
Were you involved in the preparation of the plans for this property?
yes, I was.
Okay. Can you identify the property and discuss a little bit about it here? Whatever's easier for you.
Yeah, I'd like to reference the plan that we prepared is what we call a plot plan. And it shows the existing features on the property and the proposed features of the property. The proposed features being the house and driveway and stormwater management improvements. Existing features show the elevations via contour lines, as well as the other natural resources, being some trees, and also the floodplain line from the Brock Creek, which is adjacent to this site.
Okay, so can you explain the overall shape of the property and some of the unique characteristics about the property?
Sure. The property, as you can see on the plan, is somewhat triangular in nature, which makes it, somewhat irregular as opposed to being a rectangular lot. I'm going to stand up here. Can I take this, I guess? I'd like to just, reference the plan and maybe a little easier if everyone sees this. Right here, adjacent, can you see that? Anybody pull it?
Larry, do you mind using what's up on the screen? I think it's a little easier for the rest of
Oh,
us.
okay. It's bigger. All right. Apologize. All right. For stand here. My little laser won't work here. All right. The property, as you can see, Sandy Run Road. This area adjacent to Sandy Run Road is shaded with what we're classifying as some of the steep slopes, and then also the woodlands. And this line here, this one, represents the floodplain elevation. And this is the proposed house and the proposed driveway. And here is what we're calling the rain garden for stormwater management facilities. That's a requirement of the township ordinances for the stormwater management. So, basic overview. Have any questions on it, or are we good?
All right. So you briefly discussed the natural resource on the property, and you showed where the floodplain was on the property as well. Can you go through the calculations that you did to determine what is buildable on the lot?
Okay. Yeah, I guess it's easier for me. I don't know if you could. Can you zoom over here, Alex? These are all the numbers that are the calculations for the buildable area. After we subtract out the natural resources from the property and also the right-of-ways, right here, the actual legal right-of-way, the area to the legal right-of-way is 19,984 square feet. And after you subtract out the right-of-way, the ultimate right-of-way, we have 17,800 square feet. Once again, after you subtract out the natural resources on the property being the, let me slide that up that I can see it. The natural resource calculations are here. And after we subtract everything out, there's 1,681 square feet, or approximately 10% of the property would actually be considered buildable after the natural resources are subtracted out. And that's not the building setback lines that are subtracted. That's the natural resources consisting of floodplain, trees, and steep slopes.
So is it fair to say that the net site area is significantly reduced from the gross area of the property after you take out all those calculations?
Yes, it's 1,681, I believe we calculated. Yep.
It's 1,681 square feet, it looks like.
Right.
Okay. So if not for those deductions of the resources around that area, would the property be compliant with the ordinance otherwise?
Yes, it would be compliant with the minimum lot size and the other dimensional criteria being lot width and stuff. So
Okay, so if you measured the setbacks from the limits of all natural resource protections, what would the resulting building envelope be?
there would be no building envelope. There would be zero building envelope because all the setbacks from the required natural resources would basically overlap each other, and there would be no buildable area.
When you were planning this out with Mr. Rams and his architect as well, did you try to lay this out in such a way as to try to minimize the steep slope, woodland, floodplain, natural resource buffers?
Yes, yes. I would like to say that the design of this house was specifically designed for this particular lot to minimize the impacts so that it fits on there. And I think the architect and the owner did a very good job in putting a house that conforms to the natural features of the property.
Okay. Was there, to the best of your knowledge, was there an existing improved property on this lot?
Yes, there was a building on the property previously. It was long before we got involved. I don't know exactly when it was removed, but going through the historical images on like Google Earth, you can tell that there was a building on this property. And it was, I think, also referenced in some of the tax map information.
Okay. As it sits today, it's vacant, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Is this a fair depiction of what the old house looks like superimposed on the plot right now?
Yes, based on the historical aerial images, yes.
Okay. Was there also an existing driveway at the time?
Yes.
And when you guys were looking for a way to put the improved property for Mr. Rams on the lot, were you trying to also utilize those existing curb cuts and driveway as well?
Yes, this driveway, proposed driveway is here, and that's where the existing driveway and access to the site is now.
And there was multiple discussions also with the engineers for the township over the course of preparing these plans?
Yes, there was when we first got involved with this property, Mr. Rams came to us to put together a plot plan. We looked at it and said, this is a very unique property. And being that the township's zoning ordinance in regards to natural resources it's fairly complicated. There's a lot going on in regards to the resources, the percentages, and the setbacks from that. So we prepared a plan, and to try to make sure that we had our bases covered before we came to the zoning hearing board, we wanted to submit the plan to the township, have it reviewed as a building permit so that he could identify zoning issues. So we did that. He issued a letter, I believe it was December 10th, and then he issued a subsequent letter, December 10th, 21, and then December 20th, 21, a subsequent letter which identified all the variances that would be needed. As far as the development of the property, grading wise, stormwater management wise, erosion control, things of that nature, the plan complies in that regard, but it didn't comply with the zoning ordinance in regards to the natural resources. So we had revised the plan to address those comments, identify the specific natural resources, and develop our calculations as accurately as possible to address the township's comments and make sure we identified all the applicable variances. And we submitted that plan again to the township. And I believe then they reviewed it and issued another review letter. And at that point was when the application for the zoning hearing board was made.
Okay, good. All right. I just want to circle back to a discussion we had about the wetlands buffer. So can you explain what the wetlands buffer is a little bit?
Well, it's not a wetlands buffer. It's a buffer from the edge of Brock Creek.
Okay.
So different terminologies, riparian buffers and so forth. But this is pretty accurate location of Brock Creek. It's also indicated on our plan here, Brock Creek. So depending on the type of vegetation adjacent to the creek determines the width of the buffer. If it's wooded, it's, I believe, 50 feet. If it's not wooded, I believe it's 100 feet. So we had indicated, the buffer on the plan as required, and we placed the house more or less as far away from it as possible from the creek.
Okay, so you commented that the buffer could change depending upon the amount of vegetation around it. Is that right?
Vegetation.
Yep.
It varies. There's several different,
Okay.
There's criteria for the buffers and the slopes.
So it's possible then that if let's just say it's found that we needed a 100-foot buffer here, that it could be reduced with the planting of additional vegetation around the perimeter. Is that possible?
I'm not sure if that's permitted to supplement an existing buffer to reduce the buffer.
Okay. Has there been discussion with Mr. and Mrs. Rams about planting additional vegetation to impede and slow down water flow downstream by placing vegetation along property line and within the floodplain?
Yes, there was discussions, and that was one of the items I believe that was discussed when we met with the township staff a month or so ago. They indicated they would provide a buffer, supplemental trees and vegetation along the property line. In addition, they said we do have a rain garden in this location, which would also be planted with natural, vegetation, naturalized.
Okay. Great. So we discussed previously steep slopes, and they're shown on your plan, right?
Yes.
So what class are these slopes, these steep slopes?
Well, the township has 3 classifications for steep slopes. 8 to 15% range, 15 to 25% range, and over 25% range. The numbers are indicated, on our plan. The steep slopes over 25%, we estimated or calculated at 786 square feet. We're not disturbing any of them, and there's a 0% ratio permitted. There's a slope range between 15 and 25%. We've calculated 3,919 square feet. Permitted disturbance is 30%, and we're slightly over that at 2,000 something. But as Mr. Majewski stated, that the percentages seem large, but the amounts are actually small. It's like.
And why is that?
Well, it's because it's not a very large property to begin with. It's 17,800 square feet. So if you have a small area and you're disturbing a smaller area, it just seems percentage-wise to be a lot.
Right. So when it,
For, no, like, for example, we're disturbing 2,000 approximately square feet, and it's like 51% of the steep slopes. But in reality, it's not that much area to begin with. It's
right, the raw area itself.
small area.
So you would say that that those percentages are the same for all the percentages here in your calculations?
The only one that we're technically over on was that 15 to 25% range.
Well, the other calculations, not just the steep slopes.
Oh,
A-
for
any
the
of the-
woodlands and the.
Yep.
Yeah, that would be a fair statement.
Okay, good. All right. So again, in this discussion with Mr. Rams and Ms. Architect and Ms. Architect testified to the same. One of the reasons for placing the home where it is this a correct statement that it was is because you're moving it further away from the stream? As a result, you end up encroaching more into some of that front yard setback area.
Correct.
Okay. How far away from the creek is the disturbance going to be?
Well, it varies. The creek comes through here. So I don't know exactly. 30. The house is probably a little over 100 feet or about 100 feet. 90 feet from the creek to the house.
That's for the actual building, correct?
To the proposed house, to the edge of the creek here.
Okay. I previously showed Mr. Rams an aerial view. I'm going to show you as well. This is a different aerial view, but this is an aerial view. Did you provide me with this aerial view?
Yes, I did.
And where is this aerial view? Where did you get this information from?
From the Bucks County Planning Commission's GIS website.
Okay. And how recently did you get that?
A couple weeks ago, a month.
Okay, good. All right. And is that a fair, in your opinion, dealing with this property and helping prepare these plans? Is this a true depiction of what the property looks like in the surrounding properties?
Yes.
Okay. Looking at that, the property that looking away from Mr. Rams's property on Sandy Run Road, the property directly to the right, that home looks like it's sitting almost on the street. Is that correct? Is that pretty close to?
That's correct. That would be this house here. These houses are all right on the road.
Okay. And having a chance to review the zoning ordinances when you were preparing these plans, did you come across a zoning ordinance and in discussion where it's 200.61.d, where applicant may not need a variance because the building is directly next to it, abutted within possibly 50 feet, sits closer to the street, and 200.61.d allows for closer alignment with the neighboring buildings as long as the front yard is no less than 20 feet.
Yes.
Remember coming across that? Okay. And we're at, what's our setback that we're looking for is 20.13.
Correct.
So if 200.61.d was to apply, we might not even need that variance. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And even if it doesn't, let's just say, if the board finds that that variance is still necessary, would you agree that even if that variance is needed, that the spirit and the intent of 200.61.d are met here?
Yes.
Okay. Looking at this at A2 again, is that a fairly accurate representation of the improved pieces that are on the various properties that surround Mr. Rams's property?
Yes.
And if you just point out some of the improvements that are right there, what you think they might be.
Well, excuse me, from the other, this is a dwelling. There's a bridge, footbridge, shed, another dwelling.
And you would agree that shed or whatever that accessory building is, it looks like it's right on the creek, just about?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Is it your professional opinion that this property is suitable for the development of a single-family detached dwelling such as the one the applicant proposes here tonight?
Yes.
In your professional opinion, does the property meet the characteristics of the surrounding neighborhood?
Yes.
In your professional opinion, is the relief being requested the minimum needed to afford the Rams the ability to use their home in a manner similar to the surrounding homes? Minimum?
It's a modest house for the neighborhood. Yes.
In your professional opinion, will the Rams home be detrimental to the public welfare in any way?
No.
Anything else you want to add?
Nope.
Thank you. Do you want to wait for questions at the end? Do you have questions for?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the board can ask questions and then Barb as well.
Now or after my last witness?
Who's your last witness?
The architect.
I guess, Matt, do you have any
Well,
reference on that?
Why don't we have the architect go, and then I have a feeling that we'll be coming back to this stuff, but let's let the architect go, and then we can open it up for questions for the board.
Can I ask for an offer of proof for the architect? I mean, if he's talking about the specific
She was just going to,
side and
yeah.
structure of the property, I don't know how that would be applicable to our zoning regulations. That's why I wanted an offer.
she's going to be talking about the flood vents and that's all. And the garage that's not going to be used. Okay. Okay, can you state your name for the record?
Cheryl Poulos.
Uh,
Poulos.
Can you provide your company name, business, general address, occupation, and your general experience?
Cheryl Poulos, architect, 1014 County Line Road, Philadelphia, PA, 19116. Graduated from Drexel University, worked in architecture firms for 23 years, registered in the state of Pennsylvania for 16 years, and have had my own firm for about 10 years, and generally do new homes, large scale additions, renovations.
Does anybody have any questions or issues as her being put into the preface? Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. Just a couple of base questions here first. You're familiar with the subject property?
Yes,
You helped Mr. and Mrs. Rams as they were designing the home as well?
yes.
When you were helping design the home and you were discussing, everybody was discussing where to put the home on the lot itself. Were there several things that you were looking at in addition to speaking to Mr. Byrne about trying to stay away from as much natural resource as possible?
Yes, we were trying to keep in keeping with the style of all the homes in the neighborhood, trying to keep obviously away from the stream as much as we could, which put us a little bit more into those steep slopes. So the design of the house is smaller and taller than what was there because we're trying to not build as much land as we could. And the orientation of the house is because there is a road across the street from the property, and the owners were concerned with oncoming traffic, shining lights into their living room and living space. So that's why it's kind of skewed a little bit and not perpendicular to the property.
Okay, I have in front of you, A1. Can you explain what that is and why, what it was there for?
So we did a cross section through the house, just dealing with these slopes. We were conscious of trying to keep all the building, the livable building area above the floodplain line. So this cross section is just trying to illustrate that anything that water could come into the house is going to be concrete, unfinished, the garage and storage areas.
Okay, and that's not intended to be livable
Correct.
space ever, right?
Correct.
Okay. Can you generally describe what we're looking at here?
So again, because of the existing slopes, and when with the living space being elevated, you're going to have the grade going pretty high on the front to low in the back. So we have the steps that you see on the one side with the garages below. So again, this house is trying to be as compact as we can, so it's a little taller, but still under the required height requirement. Yeah, we wanted to minimize the grading that would need to be done.
There's on either side of the garage there's two flood vents there. Can you explain what they are and
Right,
what the purpose is?
so we need to have flood vents on at least two sides of the property. So if any water would get in, it's able to come in and flow out. So we have the flood vents on the rear side, which is the lowest side. And then we're also going to have them on the next slide, you'll see on the only other side we can do it. Because again, we're trying not to touch the slopes and the grade where we don't have to.
Okay. In your professional opinion, having seen the surrounding properties and in designing this property, does it meet the characteristics of the surrounding neighborhood?
Yes.
Based on what you've been seeing in preparation for this and looking at the surrounding properties and going through these ordinances with us as we have, do you believe this is the minimum relief that we can get in order to allow the Rams to have use of their manor similar to the surrounding homes?
Yes.
All right. I guess we'll leave it up to the board here and the township, however you guys want to handle it.
I assume, Barb, you have questions. Does anybody on the board want to go first, or do we want to let Barb go through her questions and then follow up?
You know me, I always have questions.
Why
Of
don't we
course
let
you
Barb
do.
go?
All right,
You want me to go first? Okay. I'll start with Ms. Poulos.
certainly.
So if I'm looking at what's been designated as Exhibit A2, and Mr. Schneider, can you pull that up?
Is there somewhere you want me to zoom in particular? Okay.
No. Where the proposed house is towards the left appears to be thatched areas. Is that designed to be like a front porch area?
Which? Oh, yeah, those are steps to the front door.
So that's keeping with your testimony that the front of the house was designed.
Yeah, those steps are going up the existing slope of the house.
And that's designed so not in a, like, not perpendicular to the road, but designed angular to avoid
Yeah.
headlights.
Mhm.
Was there an issue about headlights going into what would have been the second floor, which is the main part of the house?
Well, because of the slope, when you get to the roadside, you are still, the headlights would still kind of be at the living, the floor where the living room and the kitchen are.
And you said the first floor is going to house mostly concrete to be for the garage.
The basement. Mhm,
There's not going to be any livable space design.
correct.
Was there any discussion with the property owner as to how to ensure that that first level will always be used exclusively for storage and garage space as opposed to in the future, somebody converting it to livable
I
area?
think we talked about possibly putting it, I mean, it's on the drawings.
And
But I
there,
think
if there's, they'd be open to finding a way to do that.
Some sort of restriction or a plan that's recorded?
I guess that's possible. Yeah.
And if I may, our floodplain management ordinance within the zoning ordinance does require that they enter into a non-conversion
Oh,
agreement
right.
for that
Yes, yes,
space so
yes.
that
Thank you.
it is in the deed protected.
Yes. Yep.
Thank you. Okay. And your plans show a total of 4 vents on the building?
I think I had 4 on the side and 2 on the back.
And that's to ensure the flow of water. So, and excuse me if I'm misstating this, because when looking at the plan, it's like really tiny. Is the lot higher near Sandy Run Road and then decreases?
Yes.
So the flow is from Sandy Run Road across the
Down to
lot into
the
the creek?
Mhm.
Okay. So when those vents are designed, we don't have to worry about a flow of water going the opposite direction?
Correct.
And I don't know if you know the answer, if I should hold it for Mr. Byrne, the plan that was provided that shows the existing house and then the new house has a darker grayish hatched area superimposed where the old house was. Is that a driveway? Is that an extension of the driveway?
Yeah, on the other drawing, I think.
A2.
Yeah, that was showing new driveway, I think is what I was trying to show. No. Yeah, so that one, the part of the driveway that's not shaded
Mhm.
was existing up to the existing house. And then I was trying to show the new driveway that we would need. And I also did a calculation that our house is actually half the size of the house that was there. And even though we're adding that driveway, we are still decreasing the impervious that was there.
So even by adding that extra slab of driveway, you're not maximizing impervious?
Yeah, the house coverage went from 15.5 down to 6.3. That's just the house. And then total impervious with the driveway, it went from 19.9 down to 15.2.
Okay.
Because that house was so large.
Just out of curiosity, why is the new section of the driveway so angular as opposed?
It doesn't have to be. I think we were just thinking about fences, like a fence line, if they ever wanted to kind of enclose the back fence,
Got it.
since they have small children.
And they also show on that plan of A2, a section that says new vegetation planted
Mhm.
by owners in accordance with township requirements and regulations,
Mhm.
recommendations. That was the result of the meeting. that we had. Have those plantings already been put on the property?
No,
What are the proposed plantings going to consist of?
that hasn't been decided.
And that the property owner, when we discussed it, agreed that he would do it subject to township approval and the
Yes.
list of plants.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's going to go along the rear of the house and in addition up the side section, just as shown on the plan?
Yes.
Now, I guess this is for Mr. Byrne, actually.
Get back in the hot seat.
Can you give more description as to the size of the proposed rain garden and how much water it should hold?
Yeah, well, I have the calculations for the rain garden, the volume wise. are on the plan.
Or on the big plan?
Yeah, there's the stormwater calculations. They're sized basically for the proposed impervious on the property. And when we sized the rain garden, we did not account for any existing impervious from the old house or anything. We assumed that the site was, vacant. So it's basically a volume calculation, certain amount of runoff times this area of impervious equals a certain volume. The numbers are on the plan. I could read them off if you want, but
No, that's fine. I didn't look at the plan, but the numbers that are intended to be used for the proposed rain garden are those that are shown on the plan.
Correct.
And where is this rain garden going to be constructed?
it's yard area here. All right, the rain garden is going to be located in the corner of the property here.
Which would be in what would
which would
be, I
be-
guess, the rear yard area?
Yeah, the rear yard is behind the house. It's designed to capture the water from the property, collect it in the rain garden, have it filtered through the vegetation and amended soils. And then there's a level spreader that would let the water kind of weep out over time.
So because that area is higher in elevation than the front, how is the rain garden going to be constructed to ensure the flow of water into it?
Well, no, this is
Lower.
actually the lowest.
Oh, it is
Yeah,
the
yeah,
lowest.
property.
Yeah,
okay.
it goes from Sandy Run.
Could you
Yeah.
zoom out again,
Sure.
please, Alex?
Oh, those are 64, not
Yeah,
84. Okay.
Here's the rain garden is here and Sandy Run is up here. So the water's flowing this way. And we have a swale to catch this water from the driveway and direct it into the rain garden.
And just briefly, is the rain garden going to be filled like with gravel and plantings or?
Yeah, the intent of the rain garden is you dig it out. There's a small berm that's built to, retain the water. And then it's planted with native, like wetland type vegetation. It's called like a rain garden mix, seed mix. And then, the applicant has agreed to supplement that with some plantings along the property line. So
Is that going to be fenced in any way to avoid a child from getting into it?
no, these rain gardens, it's designed to have a maximum depth of like 9 inches. It's not like a regular detention basin that's multiple feet deep.
And again, Mr. Burns, based on your engineering of this plan and your review of the prior property, it is your opinion that the placement of the house and its location has less disturbance of the natural resources than the prior house did?
Yes.
And if, again, the board were inclined to approve the request, on behalf of the applicant, is it fair to say you would agree that they enter into that non-conversion agreement with respect to the floodplain management for the first level?
Yes.
As well as include the additional plantings subject to the township's approval as shown on Exhibit A2?
Yes.
I have no other questions.
All right. Anybody on the board have questions?
Mr.
Go ahead,
Byrne,
Mike.
actually not Mr. Byrne. Jim, we just heard Mr. Byrne testify that the orientation of the house, size of the house, where it's going is going to have the least amount of disturbance on this lot. You've had a chance to review this plan. Would you agree with that?
Well, it's in the best location, I would say. Maybe not the least disturbance. You could put it closer into the floodplain, but that would not be preferred. They tucked it a little bit in the hillside, which disturbs a little bit more, but it actually doesn't. has less disturbance in the more critical feature, which is the floodplain, and slightly more disturbance in the less critical resource feature, the steep slopes, which are minimal disturbance. They're even under our exemption criteria of allowable disturbance. So I guess the answer would be yes. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank
I
you.
like your answer better.
Can Mr. Majewski repeat that?
Yeah.
please?
Ms. Poulos, my experience with flood vents are they're usually on either, like if they're in the front of the house, they're then in the back of the house. It appears that yours are like at 45-degree angles. Is
Yeah.
that correct?
Yeah, they usually, I can't quote what section of the code is, but it's usually a minimum of 2 exterior walls. It doesn't have to be opposite walls.
Doesn't have to be opposite walls.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to get at.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
No more questions for now.
Mike, you had some questions?
I do. Has there been any research into the history of the flooding events with this Brock Creek in relation to the property?
Meaning what? There's a
Like
flood
just
map.
how bad it's been. I remember about 10 years ago. I mean, there was foundation damage done to the house behind this property here, and even that walking bridge was knocked off its foundation.
I could maybe address that. The floodplain that we have indicated on the plan is a calculated floodplain from the FEMA flood insurance rate maps. And it's an elevation 66. And the proposed basement level of the house is elevation 66. So we're not a foot above it, but we're right at that. So any water would have to come all the way from Brock Creek up about 6-7 feet, I guess, to get to the house. So.
I'm just concerned when it does, if we do have, the events like we do have, that I've seen that creek pretty violent. My only concern would just be that we definitely make sure that we have the vegetation in place along that 100-year, along that driveway to protect protect the property just from any type of, event.
Applicants not opposed to that.
So did you map the floodway on this property as well, or just the floodplain?
Yes, the floodplain line is mapped on the plan. It's
Correct, but
elevation 66.
Did you also map the floodway?
No, I don't know if there is a floodway associated with this, but we indicated the 100-year floodplain elevation.
There is a floodway associated with FEMA map 420191 for the stream.
Okay.
I'd like to make sure that the proposed building is outside of that floodway.
If I may, Matt, I did
Yeah.
check that, and all of the building is located outside of the floodway. The floodway touches the southeast corner of the property, right where the existing driveway comes in. That's the only part of the property that the floodway actually touches.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you, Jim.
And also just to note, the livable area of the house is about 10 feet above the floodplain. So to Mike's point about the flood, I mean, the house that was there was damaged in the flood back in, I think, 99 it was, and sat abandoned for a number of years. And I think that house sat a few feet lower than this one.
It did.
Following up on that, do you guys know if you're filling in the floodway? There's a lot of proposed contours in here. some grade adjustments. Do you know if your overall cut fill is neutral or?
Right, you mentioned that we're filling in the floodway. We're not working in the floodway, but we are doing some work in the floodplain. And it would be some excavation for the rain guard and then some fill for the driveway. I don't have exact numbers.
Okay, so you don't know if you're net zero or if you got some cut or if you have some fill at the end of the day.
I don't have exact numbers for the cut and fill, but it's pretty, we try to keep everything as close to the existing grade as possible.
Okay. Can you talk about the front yard, which appears to be where the majority of the slope impacts are? It looks like you're grading out from the building to kind of create some sort of front yard area.
Well, what we're doing is we're fitting the house onto the lot, and it was designed to be, I'll say, built into the hill. So all we're doing is really just tying in the existing grades to the house. That's
Got it.
just,
So looks like elevation 2, the front yard is on plan right. Right. Yep. So elevation 2, plan right. That stair set there, that's the front yard or at the front?
this is the side, right?
That's the side.
That's the
Wait,
side.
No, that is the front. I mean, that's the front that faces Sandy Road.
Right. And
Because
so
the
the
house
stair,
is-
that stair system on the right-hand side, that's the one that
It's just
goes
here, right?
down the grade towards the driveway.
Oh, yeah, right. That is that side.
Mhm.
And you're looking to tie grade in below this walkway, correct?
I'm trying to get oriented here. You want to show the front elevation?
Give me a second.
That's the front elevation here. Is this what you're talking about?
Well, it's the front
Okay,
of the,
so-
that's, the one on the left is the front of the house. But
Okay.
that side and the other alongside with the 4 vents, those are the sides perpendicular to Sandy Road, I guess, that show that
Correct.
slope.
Go back to the other one, please. All right, so here. So here's your front door,
Right,
and here's your stairwell to get down to the front.
correct.
Okay. And in your site plan, you're pulling grade from, looks like the right of way, but in this plan, you have a bit of a drop. So I just want to make sure.
Yeah, what we're looking at is, can you see this? This is the grading in front here. We're tying in the existing grades from the road into the front of the house, and they're dropping down from here down to the lower level. That would be shine on there. That would be tying in here and then just dropping down across the front. These are the steps, and these contours are tying in to the front.
Yep.
That's all they're doing.
So,
That's what we're
so where
trying
I'm
to
going
match.
with this is,
We're matching the existing grades as it slopes down in that area, correct?
right. So is this area intended to be the front yard of the property, the street entrance? Is that where it's coming from?
No, the entrance, the driveway's over here.
Not what I'm asking. If
This
you're
is-
driving
this is
down the
front
street,
yard.
is,
It's what, it's where the prior driveway was.
Correct.
So then,
This is the driveway from the here, and this is just
So
going
what's
to be
the-
lawn area.
so this is just the front entry lawn area type to dress up that access point.
There's no access to the road.
Yeah,
there.
there's
It's-
no actual path, like a front path that goes to the road. The intention is that the owners are always going to go through the driveway and then go up the side of the house to the front door. We do have a couple steps going down toward Sandy Run, but that's more just to kind of access, so you don't have to walk all the way around. But there's no
Okay.
actual
So
path.
there's no intent to go from the house to Sandy Run through this area.
No. Yeah, just because it's a long run of stairs from that front door to the driveway. I was just thinking, giving them another kind of access just down.
And to confirm, this is the area that you're impacting the 15 to 25% slopes, correct?
Yes.
Your stormwater system, what were the storms it was designed for?
Excuse me?
What storms were your stormwater system designed for?
It was designed in accordance with the Lower Makefield Township Stormwater Management Ordinance. It's not designed for a specific storm. It's required to have volume control. We're not dealing with the peak rate because it's considered a small project. There's the notes on the plan to that effect, note number 9.
So the rain garden is in the floodplain.
Yes.
How does it operate during a flood?
The intent is for the stormwater from the site to flow into the rain garden and then weep out through the level spreader. In the event of a 100-year storm, it would be underwater. But for the normal storms, higher frequency storms, that's what it's intended to manage.
Okay.
Any other questions?
What about the mechanicals?
I'm sorry, what was that question again?
Where do we plan on, where are the mechanicals? Being that it's on a floodplain, I didn't see any. Are all the mechanicals raised?
We didn't revise the floor plan since our meeting with the township, but we did discuss not putting any mechanicals down in the basement or storage area. So we will have to redesign the floor plan if this gets approved to make room for that.
Okay.
Just to note, those mechanicals will all have to be raised a minimum of 1.5 feet above the floodplain.
Does the board have any more questions at this time?
I'm good, Matt.
Is there any public comment?
No public comment online.
Does anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve appeal number 22-1960. My understanding is we don't need any specific language since a lot of our ordinance governs stuff like not having to, they will not be able to do any development of the basement/garage area, right? I mean, everything's in here that we need, or am I missing something?
Well, actually, it is in our ordinance, so technically you wouldn't have to make that a condition because it's a condition of getting a permit. You cannot get a permit
Okay,
without that.
so I'd like,
I would ask the board to consider the condition of the owner putting in the additional plantings along the property as shown on Exhibit A2.
thank you. I knew there was something, Barb.
Does,
I agree
does
with
it
that.
cover the non-conversion agreement as well?
Yeah, that's what I asked Jim about, and that's covered. So I would like to make a motion to approve Appeal 22-1960 based on the planting, what are we calling it? The planting?
Vegetation as shown on A2. Is that
Yeah,
good? You guys good with that?
Yeah, subject to the vegetation
As shown on A2.
as shown on A2.
I'll second.
All right.
Can I
Any
just
discussion?
ask that you modify that saying that plantings have to be subject to township approval? So it's not just any,
All right, third time's the charm. Seriously, no, I knew I screwed that up. So I'd like to make a motion to approve Appeal 22-1960, subject to the vegetation as shown on A2, pending township approval of the plantings.
I'll second that.
Excellent. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you. Thank you,
very
everyone.
Very
Thank
much. Thank you.
Good luck.
All right. Our next item is Appeal 22-1967. Darren Bladowski. I apologize.
It's Modilowski, but thank you.
Oh, yeah, and I apologize.
No worries. I have trouble sometimes saying it.
All right, Adam, do we have any?
We do.
Stuff we need to cover?
Mr. Connors, we have A6 is going to be the revised plans. A7 is going to be the post-construction stormwater management report.
And the applicant is still sworn in from the last hearing?
Absolutely. Darren Bodolowski. Do you need me to spell again?
Jason Weaver, contractor. Weaver.
All right, I'll try to go quickly. I don't want to take up your time, and I know it's getting late. Just want to start out by saying my partner and I moved into this neighborhood, into Lower Makefield Township in 2016, and found our forever home. When we moved in, it literally probably was the worst house on the block, in disrepair, needed a lot of work, a lot of TLC, overgrown everything. There was junk in the back from construction debris from the previous owners. We have since cleaned that up. The place looks almost of its former self, maybe a little better in places and maybe getting there in others, but we're working towards building something nice, not just for ourselves, but our neighborhood. Last time we were here, someone mentioned something about trees, so I just want to confirm this for everyone on the board and everyone listening. My partner and I absolutely adore the trees that are in our area. So much so that we got a letter from Pico stating that they were coming to remove an ash tree that's on our property. We escalated all the way to the Attorney General's office because we have an arborist come in every year, evaluate our trees and tell us which ones need to come down, which ones need to be trimmed, which ones are healthy. We treat all of the trees. The ash itself gets treated for the emerald ash borer every 2 years, and they all get fertilized every year. If we have to take down a dead tree, we replace it with at least 1, 2 shrubs and other plantings. Just so the board is aware, that is our protocol. That's what we're doing, regardless of what's mandatory or not. Also wanted to say, since moving in, we've realized that the neighborhood isn't the most safe, even though the Lower Makefield Township Police are awesome. They can't be everywhere at once. So we've already had 1 vehicle stolen from our property. And we've also had vehicles vandalized and or damaged on our property in the neighborhood. This is the primary reason that I have scoped the plans that you see today for that size of storage facility for all of my classic cars, which, as you may or may not know, require upkeep, let alone the parts are impossible to find. So when you do try to keep something in good working order, you don't want it vandalized and or targeted for theft. You can read the blotter, you can read the Lower Makefield Township Police, you can read the Nextdoor app. You see people once every couple of weeks saying my car has been stolen, my cars have been broken into, vandalized, etc. We're trying to mitigate that with this storage piece. In addition, the site plan that we have created, our property is on the pre-1987 impervious rules. With the stormwater mitigation that we're proposing, that you should have all of the updated calculations and figures for, that puts us probably at or above the post-1987 rule set for those management features. So all I'm asking for is for that impervious number to be bumped up to what would be allowed in the post-1987 numbers, not anything more, not anything less, but just those numbers so that it's not exorbitant. Additionally, I have, and I can have Jason bring these up for you, a 1,000-foot aerial plan. Last time we were speaking, it was mentioned that this is a monstrosity. It's big, it's huge. We have numerous properties in the area that have, if not a combination of outbuildings, the same or larger outbuildings in the area. So it's not uncommon for the neighborhood to have a large outbuilding this size. Is it okay if he brings up that aerial view? In addition, several of the structures that are in the neighborhood are over the 15-foot height limit. The neighboring property is approximately 18 to 20 foot above grade. So the variance for the height should not also be outside of the norm, as I've seen that at times the board has allowed that variance to go for higher heights for the extra storage within a storage facility. And finally, no one's views are going to be obstructed. This isn't going to encompass the entire property. You may have to look left or right a little more, but the one neighbor that was mentioning that his view is obstructed, if nothing is built, his direct view is another fence and garage within 50 feet. So I don't understand where that obstruction of view is coming from. So with that, with the numbers that we provided to you for the runoff and all of the stormwater management, we're asking that you reconsider the variance that we had to continue from last meeting.
Just gonna
You submitted a report. Can you just touch on the the calculations that were submitted in that report?
Sure. So I asked my engineer to over engineer for my property because we have a large amount of runoff that comes from other properties, as we're one of the lowest in the area, and my neighbor Deb Schaefer is the lowest. And we share that combined one spot that's combined that's extremely low. So I asked my engineer to figure for the ponding that happens for a 100-year storm, as well as managing everything that faces that low spot so that any runoff that we produce will be captured, contained until it can perk. Last meeting, it was stated we don't know if it's going to perk. Well, we don't know as of yet, but my site excavator absolutely knows that when he is digging, if he gets to the point where it's still clay or he's still not getting pervious, he has the autonomy to move the location to someplace that will perk. And if required by the town, we would test.
I'm just going to mark this aerial as A8.
And in the report you submitted, your engineer talks about the storm tank system is designed for half of the existing dwelling, rooftop, the ponding area, as well as the new garage structure.
That is correct. And that is because the front doesn't face that slope. So everything that runs off of the back collects in the middle back, and the front actually rolls off into the storm drain on Walnut and goes down to the creek or runoff, whatever that is.
Jim, did you have a chance to take a look at the stormwater management report? And do you have any comments on it?
I did have a chance to review the report and sorry. And the stormwater management system is designed for the 100-year storm. As you're aware, and as it was stated in the prior application, typically for smaller projects, we require that they control the volume of runoff from typically what's considered like a 2-inch rainfall or a 1-year storm. This was sized for the 100-year storm for the areas as you had mentioned.
Does the board have any questions?
No, I mean, I was most interested in the stormwater management. That was answered. I have opinions about the outbuilding, but I guess we can discuss that when we get there.
Did you, did not see a new application or a new design for the building. Are you sticking with the height that was submitted for the?
I would like to as
Sorry?
option A, correct, yes.
If you had opinions about the height, why don't we discuss that?
I mean, my opinion is we have the ordinance for a reason, and 25 feet is excessively higher than what our ordinance allows. I'm definitely against the 25-foot high outbuilding.
Even when adjacent buildings are above the ordinance?
Well, so I've said this to other people before. I understand your feeling on that. A lot of that stuff predates current zoning ordinance. So those outbuildings were put in prior to the current ordinance. So they were basically grandfathered in. And that's not how I look at it, although I do take it into account. now we're being told that your neighbor is 18 to 20 feet, and you're talking about 25 feet. And we had neighbors to both sides of you come for public comment and basically say it's a problem for them. And to me, I find that compelling. And I understand what you're trying to do. I love classic cars, and you're not just trying to build a classic car garage. You're trying to create some attic space for tools and seasonal decorations and the like, and clean up your yard. You made that case really well. I mean, but when I look at a building that's 50 by 35, I think there's probably room to bring the height down to something much more reasonable than 25 feet and still find storage along with the classic cars. Again, that's only my opinion. I don't know how the rest of the board feels.
What strikes, I understand what you're trying to do. You're trying to, protect your cars, and, they're a big investment. I get it. I am of the same opinion that, it's a big structure with a tall height associated with it for an accessory use. So I think if you were to find a way to reduce the overall height, that, I would be more open to it. And it sounds like the board would be.
Well, we could come down to 20 if that would appease the board. That would give me enough crawl space to put some seasonal items, some landscaping items. I wouldn't have more than 6 foot tops at the peak to get into, but I could bring it down to that level so that I can kind of split the difference.
I mean, 20 works better for me, I have to say. I mean, and by the way, you made a point too, or perhaps your contractor made a point, which I agree with. From an elevation standpoint, the higher roof ridge is a more attractive building. I understand that. However, again, we have the ordinance for a reason. The other reason that I don't want to hold your feet to the fire and have you come all the way down to what the ordinance allows is I'm willing to compromise is I like that you came forward and you're trying to solve a problem in terms of the stormwater that collects on your property and your neighbor's property. I mean, I'm hoping that when this project's done, you actually solve that problem. So
Me too.
since you're coming, trying to solve something that you don't have to solve, I'm willing to compromise, and I would be okay with 20. But again, I'm just speaking for myself.
I also, 25 was high. The average two-story home is what, about 18? So 20 would be, you should have more than enough space for storage. And I'm okay with 20.
I'm honestly good with 25. I think that it's a more appealing looking, it looks better. It's a better looking building. It increases the property value. It goes along with what the neighborhood's trying to do. I'm okay with the 25.
We were trying for an aesthetic that fit the neighborhood, that didn't look out of place, that didn't look trashy, I'm sorry to say, and that I can actually get into and store the things that aren't cars.
It looks like a barn. If you drive around, I've been trying since the last time we had this meeting to just look around at neighborhoods. It looks like a barn. It looks like a carriage house. So the 25 with me is okay. I think actually the 20 won't look as good. That's my opinion.
Well, if I just like to let the board know that I was directed by the township to oppose the application primarily due to the height of the structure. It would look more like 2 houses sitting on one lot as opposed to a house with an accessory structure. I would ask that if the board were inclined to grant this relief, that any approval be subject to the inclusion specifically of that stormwater plan that was presented. He's saying he's going to put in 85 to 90 tanks. Not that I don't trust you, Mr. Bodolowski, but nothing to say, oh, let's see if we can get away with 60 tanks.
I'm willing to sign that.
I would just ask that the board make that a specific condition in light of all of the research and information provided as to how this stormwater management system is designed to not only take care of the additional impervious surface, but help reduce what's existing on the property as it is now.
I mean, I said it earlier, Mike, so I do agree with you aesthetically, that 25-foot high building will look better than the 20-foot high building. You know, I'm not married to my opinion, but, you know, curious what, Matt, what do you think?
I think that there is a way to dress up either building 25 or 20 to make it look appealing. You could do a gable or something to dress up the roof line. I think there's a lot of opportunities. So that it doesn't look like second house on one lot, which is my primary concern.
We'd be willing to explore those options with the board if so needed.
Which options are those, Mr. Badalowski?
Making some aesthetic adjustments so it doesn't look out of place or that it is optimal for
What I think Matt was talking about is if we granted you 20 feet, there's a way to also aesthetically make that pleasing.
Okay, sure.
That's what he was primarily talking about.
Correct. Is there any public comment on this one?
We have one public comment online.
Matt,
Does the board have any more questions, or do we want to do public comment and then come back to the board?
Matt, we have in-person public comment too, if you want to take that first.
Okay. Let's
Yeah, I'm
do-
done with discussion. I'd rather hear public comment.
Good.
Hi, my name's Deborah Schaefer. I am not repeating myself. SHAFFER was here before. I'd just like to add two things specific to one, to support what the board is feeling about the 25 feet high. My property is part of the Makefield Terrace development, and my deed, as an example, is subject to certain restrictions as far as Makefield Terrace is concerned. And one of the verbiages on the restrictions is specific to any garage or other building that may properly go with the dwelling shall be in the rear of the dwelling and shall harmonize with the architecture or the same. I realize that's subjective as far as what that really means, but I also felt that 25 feet was excessive based on my interpretation of this. My second comment does have to do with the stormwater, not repeating. I believe that based on the topographic map that was conducted prior to the installation of or the redoing of the pool, is that I still think that the stormwater retention area is undersized. That is mostly due to some, as an example, the topo elevations that I have as far as what the 116.3 contour is. That is mostly on both of our properties, but I am at the low spot. But mostly because of the fact that the area that's being managed is actually a little bit less than the actual issue. Based on these pictures, which I can show the board.
I think last time we had. Double check my notes.
I did submit some pictures last time, but what I was,
Your photos last time, Schaefer 1, and then the survey was Schaefer 2. So if you're saying this is a little different. we can mark
The only
that.
difference is the fact that I isolated the ISO contour of the 116.3 topographic elevation that is on 116 going into 119 or 118, which is my property. But they do look similar. That's the only difference, is that I drew that in.
I'll still mark it. So we can mark this as Schaefer 3. And are these photos different?
What's different about those photos is that that's from an April 6th rain event, and based on the supporting documentation, that's only based, what I did was I looked at what the rain event was for a week prior, and that's only based on 2 inches of rain. So you can still see that there's some low spots relative on a 116 Walnut as well as my property that I think are still undersized and still need to be addressed.
You have
So when you say undersized, you recognize that the applicant only has to provide stormwater for his addition. Everything else is basically out of the goodness of his heart.
Based on his addition, based on the low spot in the center of his property, but
No,
there's,
no, ma'am.
I'm sorry.
Our code only requires him to do stormwater for his addition. Everything above and beyond that, he is doing because he wants to.
Oh, I understand that. I understand that. I was just making a point that what he's suggesting doing is still, I think, undersized for his property. That was my point. So that's it. Does anybody have any questions for me?
So just to clarify, because you gave me, there's a plan of survey with I guess a yellowish orange tab. And then there's also one on the back of the
That just shows the additional,
one.
yes,
Okay.
sorry.
And these photos are new or old?
They should be April 6th. I don't know. I'm not sure if they were submitted from that angle prior to. I apologize.
April 6th last time as well. I just don't want to mark anything.
That's fine.
And then you have, looks like the
Rainfall precipitation from that period. Correct.
so we can mark that. The plans as Schaefer 3, and then the information about the rainfall is Schaefer 4.
I apologize if it was redundant. I don't remember exactly what photos I provided prior. So.
Yeah. A couple, it's just 2 photographs and then 2 pages of the climatological data for March of 2022 and April of 2022, and then the plans, the highlighted plans on the back.
I can also submit as an exhibit, which I didn't submit prior to my first point, which was.
The deed will.
Well, it's subjected to the properties that abut the lane, which is properties 35, 34, which is his, mine's 35. And that is the reason why all the properties that are subjected under the Makefield Terrace development are subject to those restrictions. So while I don't know what his deed reads, I would assume it probably reads the same because the tennis court, that is also part of the tennis court. So.
Yeah, we'll mark it as Schaefer 5. I mean, you can take it into, you can give it certain weight as you see fit. But it's
Understood.
more for an illustrative purpose to show that. And it is on the second page. So subsection C, each dwelling erected shall be a single detached dwelling and shall not be near 10 feet to the sidelines of the said lots, and no more than 1 dwelling house should be erected on any one lot. Any garage or other building, this is now D, any garage or other building that may properly go with the dwelling shall be in the rear of the dwelling and shall harmonize with the architecture where the same.
May I respond to that?
You can let her finish and then you can have a moment. Yeah.
The only other point I'd like to add is my garage was permitted in 1995 and the permit on record has it 16 feet high and it is 25 by 35. So that is what's permitted with the township. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any?
I believe we have a call in.
Yeah, is there any other in-person public comment? Yep. Looks like one more, Matt, and then we can go online.
Okay.
Bruce Wood, I was here at the previous hearing as well. I know from what Matt said that it just,
Be sworn in.
I do. Okay. Witt, W-I-T-T, first name Bruce, and from 122 Walnut Lane. I know Matt had referenced that all that the owner needs to address is what's going to be happening as far as the current addition would be concerned. I know he's going above and beyond that. One thing I just wanted to mention that I didn't mention last time is some things have changed a little bit. I know Mr. Majewski had said that he had been out there multiple times before. With the repaving of Walnut Lane that happened from last year, there has been some change as far as, and you're not in your head as well, it's increased as far as the drainage coming through with the current situation. Even after we had our meeting 2 weeks ago, we had the heavy rain that was that following weekend. There was a couple inches of rain and ended up with, at this point, with our property, that you end up with water that covers half the driveways sometimes coming to the front of the house because of the increased water that's coming down Walnut Lane to where the intermittent stream is at this point. I don't know if you've had an opportunity to be out there since that point. So again, appreciate what you're doing as far as the drainage is concerned. I know we're both in agreement that there seems to be just additional water overall from when the repaving was done. So.
Thank you.
All right, do you want to bring in the online or on the phone public comment, please?
Bringing them in now.
Jill and Walt?
Yes.
Yep.
I'd like to say something and then my husband will say something.
Can you guys just identify yourselves and then be sworn in?
Sure. Jill Olivant.
And Walter Olivant at 9 Oak Ave.
Hi, you guys
Hey, Walt,
solemnly
can you
swear.
lean back and
We just swear you guys in. Do you solemnly swear the testimony we have to give will be the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I just wanted to say, I know Darren doesn't think that it's an issue to have that size of a building. But our back of our house and our sunroom especially is in direct line with where he's going to build that building. And I invite Darren to come on over and sit in my sunroom, and I invite the board to come over and sit in my sunroom. And you will see, I will not be able to see probably any trees after that building's built, if it's at 20 feet or above. I really strongly ask this board to reconsider, allowing this variance. It may, somebody had said that it's going to increase his property value, but it will most certainly decrease our property value. We have been here for 23 years, and the sale of this house, when we moved in, was the park-like setting in the back of our house. That was one of the selling points on this house. So yes, Deb's property, Steve, who was the prior owner, built that garage, but there were a bunch of trees at that time still on Darren's property. So we really could not see, and I have a bunch of pictures. I don't have them right here right now, but I have pictures of the property then. So we were not able to see that building. So I know, and now that he took down all those trees, now it's wide open and we could definitely see that building. But that still set far back on from our property, requesting to have built, it's definitely going to decrease our property value, and we will have a hard time selling our house, I feel, if that is allowed to be over 20 feet. Again, Deb had said that her building in the back is 16, so it's within the reason of what can be built. And I understand what Darren's saying, but and the board had asked Darren to try and speak with us, the neighbors, and he never made an effort. So we can't work with him if he's not going to speak with us about this. So that's all I wanted to say, and my husband has something else.
Hello. I spoke before on June 7th at the prior hearing before the continuance. And basically, the proposed structure is larger than everyone's house that is coming from Oak Avenue, which is 9 Oak Ave where we live, our neighbor at 11 Oak Ave. It's larger than Darren's house and Deb's house. It's in no way conforming to what looks like just a storage building or access building behind his house. His pool is behind his house. Then there's water, and that water's been sitting there. We've had a couple rainstorms, everybody knows in this area, not much recently, but a couple. There's been probably about 20 foot by 30 foot pool of water, maybe a half a foot deep, that's been sitting in that backyard and still is sitting in the backyard. I just mowed the grass today and I still saw it back there. So as the other two said, along the Walnut, excuse me? I thought there was somebody with a question. That water sits back there, and that's an existing water issue. I mean, no variance over 18% of the allowable impervious surface should be allowed. I mean, and this building height, Deb's is probably about 16 or 17 feet. I walked back there myself through the tennis court looking at it. I asked her, and Steve, when he built, and I know Steve said I was a little taller than the 15, like my wife said, from the back of our house, our dining room, our kitchen, the sunroom. I mean, if it's taller than 15 or 16 feet, we cannot see the tree line of that little like preserved area that's behind the tennis court. And before Darren took down a lot of the bushes and a lot of the trees, as he's saying, maybe those trees needed to come down. I don't know that that's a valid point or not. He's willing to take down any trees he wants to take down, but he took down 10 trees. This has got to add to the water sitting there now, because now that's 10 trees that aren't drinking the water. Even if he planted saplings, which I don't know where they are because I can't see any but a couple, and I'm talking 2 or 3, not 10. They're not taking up that water. So like my wife said, this is going to decrease our view, our value of our property. Nobody's going to want to buy a property necessarily. They will. It'll just decrease our property value by 10 or 20% or 5%, whatever the number is. But the building height shouldn't be allowed to be over 15 feet, 16, 17, 18 feet. When we're starting to talk 20 or 25, yeah, the board, anybody that didn't question, come back. For the gentleman who I said, oh, the barn size isn't bad, 25 feet. Well, let's put it 75 feet behind your house, which is what this is. This is 200 feet plus behind Darren's. So this is to the far extent of his property. Now, the other thing with this is the size needs to be reduced because as the neighbor spoke and as I speak of the existing water that's out there right now, yes, Darren's idea of putting in this storm management system is going to improve anything that's there now. That's not adding a building that's 3,500 square feet. That's not adding any additional concrete. That's just what the water that's there right now. So the point I'm trying to make is the building shouldn't be over 15, 16 feet. The size needs to be reduced, not to exacerbate the existing water problem. In 99, when we moved in, Hurricane Floyd, I know it, we spoke about it, at the last hearing I brought up, and the appeal right before this brought up the 99 floods from that Hurricane Floyd. There was almost 1.5 feet, 2 feet of water in Deb's property, Darren's property, and some of my property. Now, the big question I have for any of this is, I don't see a driveway shown to get to this building from the front of Darren's property. There's only access, as far as I know, that the township has approved for access onto this property through Walnut Lane. There is a access in the back that is basically an alley access, and all the neighbors can walk back there by foot. Darren can walk on his property by foot. Deb can walk on her property, but the three people or owners along Oak Avenue, 9 Oak Ave, 11 Oak Ave, and the tennis court have been using this as an easement and a right of way for I don't know how many years. And that's an agreement with those property owners. Now I asked, everybody around here is, how is there access to this proposed access storage building other than through Walnut Lane? Because I am in no way, as the only adjacent property owner to Darren, going to say yes through my property or through the easement that I've been maintaining for over 21 years to allow him construction, operation of this building through that easement. The township want to have nothing to do with the easement. They don't want to maintain it. They've said that when I tried to move in 20 some years ago. And I'm claiming as a right of way, the easement for the property owners at 9 Oak, where I live, 11 Oak Ave, and the tennis court we've been using for convenience purposes for vehicle. But I maintain this, and if anything, if the township is going to bring up, can approve him through that, I'd like to say I don't know how to write. I don't know anybody else that has that access on the Darren's property. 11 Oak Ave, the neighbor on the opposite side of this easement, doesn't even have access to their own property in the back because their garage blocked. So Darren doesn't have any rightful legal access other than, as far as I know, what the township may approve. And I'd like the township to have to address this, that any approval of a building, whether it's 15 or 20 feet higher, as large as he has it, or Walnut Lane. Because unless Darren wants to sit down and come to some agreement, which I don't know that if he does or doesn't, I'm going to say no is the only person that's maintained this for over 21 years, along with the tennis court and the other neighbor, that we have access along Oak Ave. This is not meant for his access. So if the township can address that, because like I said, and if it's for the primary use of classic vehicles, which, hey, I just went to a classic vehicle show on that Father's Day. So yeah, I'm all in the classic vehicles. But Darren's going to be repairing and storing vehicles and parts back there. I don't know how he's going to get any vehicle back to this storage building unless it's flown in.
So while you were talking, I just pulled up the tax map for this property. It appears to be a public alley. It may be in a deed as a right of way, but my experience is, and I have 36 years of experience, when it's drawn on a tax map, and I'm going to pass this over to Jim Majewski and he can weigh in, but obviously it comes in off of Oak, like you said, but it's on the tax map. If it was purely a right of way or an easement, generally you wouldn't see it on the tax map. That's my experience, but let me hand this over to Jim. You want to see the tax map?
No, if I may, the alley that is behind the property is shown in the recorded plan for this development. So you'd have to consult an attorney about who has rights to it, but it's my understanding that all of the people who abut that alley have the right of access through that.
Well, if I may address that, I'll address it as this. We'll talk 4 simple points. First, if we want to call it an alley by designation, as far as I know, in terms of Department of Vehicle Use, everything else, is meant for urban areas. People can bicycle back there. I see women go back there with their dogs and their babies, and it's meant for alley access by foot. So yes, Darren can walk in by foot, but the tennis court, along with us and the other property owners before me, back in the 1950s, Gloria Perrine and Jim Harm, used only the access from either Walnut Lane or Oak, where they lived. And this was used for the tennis court as a convenience. Since it's not a true right-of-way, they were using it as a right-of-way. Because they did use it for over 20 or 30 years, it can be considered as such. The township, where they come in, I asked them, and they said, no, we're not going to maintain this. Gloria Perrine had been maintaining at 11 Oak Ave. She said to me in the year 2000, well, I'm getting old. I don't want to keep doing this. I said, Gloria, I'll take it all year. 12 months. The tennis court's back there for 6 or 7 months. They didn't want to do it. Township said, we can't do it. It's not 33 feet wide. It's 16 feet. It's meant as an alley for walking purposes only, like you're walking down a dead end. Not for driving, but like I said, as a right-of-way, and Darren can laugh all he wants, but the tennis court and I go back and forth, and I say, look, if the tennis court doesn't want to obey their nice speed limit that they came up with, because we all have children, that's it. No more access. And agreed to that. Darren's prior owner, Jim Harm, agreed that he was only going to use it temporarily here and there. I've allowed Darren, in a sense, to say, all right, you had to reconstruct your pool. I don't mind your vehicles going back there, but that totally trashed the entire yard. But he's not going to have access by vehicle unless there's some agreement with me as a primary, because I connect to Darren's property. I can drive from Oak through my property into my back property in the Darren's. So he could get his vehicles legally through my property. He can't go through 11 Oak Ave. They can't even get to their property behind their storage garage. He can't access it through the tennis court, although the secondary property owner, Deb, accesses it through the tennis
I'm going
court.
to object to this line. I mean, we're getting far off the topic, and it's going into a whole different realm that is not really necessary to the zoning application as to who owns the alley, whether it's to be used for vehicular traffic or pedestrian traffic. I think that's above and beyond. So, Mr. Flager, I would ask that you direct Mr. Witt to sum up his argument as to whether.
Well, I just like to say on behalf of that, yes, I agree. And that's why I'm saying, I'm hoping that the only approval the township is giving is the only legal access through Walnut Lane, because any other access, the township has given up their right to maintain this easement that the tennis court, 9 Oak Ave and 11 Oak Ave use.
An easement.
We can cut that down to vehicle access or no vehicle access, but nothing gives Darren the right to access that, because the township doesn't maintain it as a right of way or anything.
There's the township, and then there's the zoning hearing board, and the zoning hearing board has no control over a township easement or right of way. So that's outside of the powers and purview of the zoning hearing board.
Right, and that's why I'm
I
really
understand what you're
asking.
saying, but the township deals with that, where your whatever's on the deeds would govern that. But that's not before the zoning hearing board.
No, and that's why
Before
I'm
the zoning
asking,
hearing
where
board
is
is
the
two
driveway
things,
access to the building?
which is the impervious surface and the height. Those are the only
Right.
two issues.
But he's going to have to increase his impervious cover a lot to make a driveway from Walnut Ave to access the back
But
of the storage building.
But again,
I don't see that access is what I'm asking for.
that potential for a future access point is also not in front of us. If that was to come before us, that would be an additional application for, presumably impervious and potentially anything else. And they'd have to show stormwater remediation and the like. But again, that's not in front of us. That's a speculative variance in the future.
Well, it's not speculative in the sense that if you're going to give him approval in any way for this oversized building and impervious surface amount, that you're going to add water, you're going to add this building size, but you're not saying how is he going to access the building he wants to put vehicles in when he has no vehicle access drawn. So you're going
According to
to
the plan
approval for an
presented,
access
he has vehicle access by the alley. This is way outside of the scope of our purview.
Well, who do
We understand you
contact
don't
in
like,
the township then about the easement? Because when we first moved in, we went to the township on this easement and they had nothing to do with it. So my question is,
it's not
if
an
it's a public
easement, first of all.
access way, then who is maintaining that?
That's outside the scope of this discussion. Do you have anything else pertinent to the impervious or the height of the building?
This building approval, whether you do or not, that's up to the board. But that you're giving access approval, but there's no way to access that.
I don't think we need to hear that again. We understand your point. I'm not being rude. That's going to be an argument for a different day based on how we render a decision.
Okay, thank you very much.
Do we have any other,
Matt, if I may,
Go
I
ahead.
did have one possible suggestion. If you wanted to lower the height of the building, if you actually just lopped off 5 feet from it, made it 30 feet deep, you could still fit a car, you could still fit a lot of storage and keep kind of close to the roof pitch and get down to 20 feet. And then you'd reduce your impervious surface and you reduce the roof height to be more closer to being in conformance. Just a thought.
I'm sorry, Jim. Seriously, can you just start the very beginning again? I apologize.
Yeah, no problem. Instead of a 35-foot wide building, reduce that by 5 feet to a 30-foot wide building. And by doing that, keeping a slightly flatter roof pitch, but not too much flatter roof pitch, you could reduce the height from 25 feet at the peak down to 20 feet.
So we were prepared to come down to 20 feet on the structure as planned. So, and I understand what you're saying there, but we did discuss that impervious. And if you look at the 1987 pre and post numbers, we're with the stormwater mitigation, we're at the post 1987 impervious limit, which I feel with all of the mitigation that we're doing, we should be almost allowed to be in that impervious range instead of the pre-1987.
Jim, what would the effective rate be with their proposed stormwater?
I'm not sure.
Do you know if it's at least down to the current 14.1? Or is it?
I think it's, I would guess it's more than that because they're also mitigating off-site runoff. So
Yeah, it would be significantly reduced below what is currently there. However, as Mr. Bodolowski and some of the residents have pointed out, there is that flooding problem that he's helping to address. So it's but it is a reduction, significant reduction.
I mean, I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but from an impervious standpoint, I'm very happy with the stormwater management plan, specifically because right now we have a flooding problem, and none of us can sit here and know factually that what has been designed is going to work perfectly, but I'm pretty confident it's going to give relief. And that's factoring in the fact that he's trying to build a 35 by 50-foot building with a 20-foot roof. So from my seat, I'm fine with all this if he comes down to a 20-foot roof. That's from my seat. Again, I'm up for other people's opinions though.
I'm good. 20-foot roof. I think it's a great plan.
I'll concur because I believe that mitigating the problem was probably the foremost thing that will help not only Mr. Bolofsky, I'm sorry, but will also help his neighbors and the neighborhood. I would be happier with the 20-foot than a 25-foot.
Does anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion for Appeal 22-1967 to approve with the change to a 20-foot roof.
Yeah, can we add language in that, talking about the storm system?
Yeah, to guarantee that what we put on the site plan is going to be what goes into the ground?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
And you might
we
want
have
to
a
just
second?
word that subject to conformance with the site plan and stormwater management plan as submitted.
Okay. Does the, Jim, do you know if the town engineer has any issues with the system or anything? Do we want to bring that into, have him review it, or?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Has the township engineer reviewed this?
Yes, that should be on there too.
Okay, all right. So add subject to review by the township engineer. And do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right. I'm assuming there's no more discussion. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Good. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Congratulations. All right. And that was the last item on the agenda. Do we have any other business to discuss next 2 weeks agenda, or we have a holiday coming up? Does that impact anything?
We do have a meeting scheduled for July 5th. I believe when I polled the members last time, we had 3 out of the 4 were available. I'm not sure about Judy, and Judy just said that
I
she
am
is also
available.
available. So we have
Okay.
4 members available for July 5th.
Be on Zoom.
All right, excellent. Any other business we need to discuss?
Nothing.
All right, hearing none, motion to adjourn.
I second.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Everybody have a great week.
Take care. Good night, everybody.